He was not a man of war but of silence, a silent king reigning over a realm of whispers and shadows, where echoes of betrayal lingered longer than the breaking of dawn. The world in which Marissa Miller now found herself was not defined by light or dark, but by the twilight in between, the space where truths are neither spoken nor acknowledged. Marissa, a widow at 69, once opened the door to her home with warmth that rivaled the sun. Her home was not just a structure of bricks and wood, but a tapestry of countless memories woven through years of shared laughter and comforting silences. Every room held the echoes of love, every garden flower a testament to life's persistent renewal. But even the sunniest rooms can harbor shadows. In that house of warmth, a new darkness crept in, stealthy and insidious, threatening to unravel the harmony she had so painstakingly built. It began with a simple dissonance, a discordant note in the symphony of daily life that others might have dismissed as trivial, a disagreement over garden plants. Yet sometimes the smallest cracks reveal the deepest divides. Ethan, her son, standing in defense of his wife Rebecca, seemed to Marissa like an unending night, encroaching upon her carefully cultivated daylight. There he stood, no longer the boy who once marveled at the way she distilled wisdom in the form of bedtime stories, but a man swathed in silence that spoke volumes. But silence has a voice, a language of its own, often loudest when ignored. Silence, supposedly the realm of peace, had become the very weapon that was to be wielded against her tranquility. Why would such a man choose silence as his ally? Perhaps because it is in silence that power is amassed, and the undercurrents of emotional revolt gain momentum. There are men who sharpen in silence, transforming betrayals into blueprints of redemption or retribution. This, Marissa knew, was not her son's doing alone. The graceful manipulator Rebecca lurked quietly behind the veneer of sweetness. Her elegance was but a thin veil for the machinations that slowly unspooled the familial bond once revered. Why then does one remain silent when their throne is usurped? It is not always an act of surrender, rather it can be a prelude to transformation. There are mothers who break at the sight of such betrayal, and there are those who mend their own wounded hearts in silence, forging anew. Marissa was bound neither by the frailty of despair nor by the restraints of resignation. The realization was chilling. It was not weakness that stayed her words, but the comprehension of a destiny not yet fulfilled. Her silence was her sword, her sanctuary for strength, a place where she could gather the threads of her resolve. Some kings do not roar, they wait and then erase. The winter of her silence was not an ending but the beginning of a grand metamorphosis. In the spaces between regret and forgiveness, power brewed and untold strength awaited, waiting to be sculpted into a future of her own making. She had yet to reclaim her rightful place as the matriarch, to remind them that it was not kings that always waited. Sometimes it was the queens who held the true potential for change. Her heart, though cracked by the loss of her husband's steady companionship and her son's now distant warmth, beat with the fury of an ancient drum. Her silence was not the silence of the meek. It was the quiet before the storm, the calm before revolution, the breath before the battle cry. Here psychological symbols abounded: darkness, uncertainty, silence, shadow, all poised on the brink of discovery and redefinition. In the sacred silence between them, alliances were being forged between Marissa's resolute spirit and the elements of her once disordered thoughts, leading to a new understanding of family respect and identity. Some betrayals echo louder in silence than in screams reverberating in the recesses of the heart. In her silence lay the seed of strategy, a quiet rebellion wrapped in a cloak of grace, waiting to unfurl and alter the course of what once seemed unchangeable. Thus, in a paradox that defied the expectations of those deceivers, silence was not the absence of words in Marissa's world, but the presence of something far more powerful, the voice of dignity reclaiming its throne. What they mistook as acquiescence was a strategic withdrawal, a prelude to new beginnings and the emblem of an indomitable will ready to create a narrative worthy of her legacy. Never mistake the silenced woman's quietude for defeat, for in her waits the awakening and with it a reign yet to be unveiled. Marissa's stoic demeanor etched lessons of grit into the fabric of her life, each brick of her home symbolizing a chapter steeped in sacrifice and devotion. This home wasn't just a structure. It was the cornerstone of dreams shared with her late husband Andrew. Together they arrived in the city with little more than ambition and a vision for stability, a sanctuary created with sweat and love. Each tile laid down was a testament to late nights and early mornings where determination mingled seamlessly with hope. Years passed, and their home grew into a living entity occupying a place in their hearts that no modern structure could replicate. But with Andrew's passing, the shelter they'd built transformed into a haven under Marissa's stewardship alone. The living room bore witness to laughter, New Year celebrations, and solace. It breathed stories, echoed laughter, and captured tears. Andrew's memory lingered in every creak of the floorboards and every whisper of the wind through the garden they had tended with care. Yet family politics, much like hidden cracks beneath the varnish, began to unravel the sanctuary Marissa so carefully maintained. It started simply as most poignant tales do. Her son, Ethan, once an echo of his father's virtues, stood at a crossroads animated by love and ambition influenced by another. Rebecca, his spirited partner, radiated a confidence born from a newer world, one where tradition bowing to convenience seemed not a sacrilege but an expected evolution. Yet within this narrative, Rebecca's actions spoke louder than her claims of reverence. Marissa watched silently as Rebecca began subtly yet surely to assert her dominance over facets of the household. Her dismissive remarks about the so-called outdated interior decor clawed at Marissa's patience, each word a hammer against the pillars of tradition that stood sturdy only through respect and kindness. The flutter of Rebecca's disdain disguised under feigned concern was a cyclone building in the corners of Marissa's consciousness. Ethan, trapped between love and legacy, found himself transforming. The warmth of old familial bonds began to smolder, banked under the ashes of new marital commitments. And loyalty, a value Marissa had instilled with tales of heroism and familial duty, seemed to bend under the weight of Rebecca's influence. The essence of the home, so carefully cultivated, felt compromised by whispers of modern expedience over ancestral wisdom. Each interaction further layered the conflict, each smile that failed to reach Ethan's eyes, every conversation ending in silence, every tender moment overshadowed by misunderstanding. It pained Marissa to witness the gradual erosion of the bond she once steadfastly shared with her son. The kitchen, once bustling with shared culinary exploits, now felt eerily quiet, a tableau where broken trust simmered discreetly. Though hearts cracked and words went unspoken, dignity nudged Marissa to reclaim her power silently yet irreversibly. The decisive act of changing the locks represented to Marissa a pivotal declaration: a mother's love can coexist with boundaries, that her home was not merely a hospitable stop but a testament to unyielding resilience. It stood as a rebuke to undertones suggesting she had become a relic. A clear message resided in this action: respect, not mere convenience, in her domain, where generations learned that true power lay not in the ability to command others, but in remaining unshaken, regardless of external upheavals. For Ethan, this event was not merely the inconvenience of being locked out of a home. It was an involuntary awakening, one that confronted him with the raw consequences of misplaced loyalties. He faced the void left by his mother's absence, realizing too late the glow of maternal warmth replaced by a chill of self-reliance and chaotic strain. The financial underpinnings of his existence, those quietly spared by Marissa's subtle hand of support, began to loosen. Each day carved a new chasm of understanding as realization settled mercilessly upon him, the cost of forsaking wisdom disguised as tradition for fleeting validation. As Marissa sidestepped manipulations and emerged undaunted by the political games whispered through Rebecca's family tree, Ethan found his path lined with echoes of his youth. Memories of his mother standing stately amid life's unpredictability haunted him with pointed persistence. Conversations with Marissa became complex undertakings fraught with the nuance of a broken yet unforgotten familiarity, a symphony of conflict and belonging. In this multi-generational epic, silence, a weapon and salvation alike, held its place. The storyline of misunderstanding, betrayal, and realization wound through time, begging for introspection and revealing truths about family dignity and identity. Ethan's understanding of home, its meaning shaped beyond physical boundaries, was challenged, inviting a search within and without to rebuild the bridges charred by ignorance and choice. Thus, Marissa's journey, mirroring the cyclical nature of love and justice, resumed with newfound clarity, her legacy an indelible imprint on the stone pathways of her enduring home. In its walls echoed lessons for those willing to listen. That silence, when chosen wisely, wields the power to rebuild worlds and ultimately to cradle the future with the strength born of quiet resolve. Ethan, once the apple of Marissa's eye, found himself ensnared in Rebecca's web, losing sight of the values that had long anchored his character. Subtle though the changes were at first, they began to manifest through dismissive comments and a gradual distancing from his mother's wisdom and warmth. These adjustments were unhurried like the slow creeping growth of ivy, but they were unmistakable to Marissa, who watched her son transform before her eyes. Rebecca, magnetic and persuasive, recognized the depth of Ethan's attachment to his family and set out to mold him for reasons known only to her. Under Rebecca's influence, Ethan adopted new priorities, ones that often clashed with the traditions and respect that had been his guiding stars. The shift was slow, a delicate rethreading of his narrative, but it was effective. Rebecca's persuasive charm wielded an influence that both fascinated and perplexed Ethan, drawing him deeper into a world of inflated ambition and the need for external approval that clashed with his family's subdued and sincere ethos. Marissa, sensing the tremors beneath the surface, faced not only the heartbreak of this transformation but also the isolation it brought. Her relationship with Ethan, once a dynamic interplay of trust and mutual respect, grew laden with friction and misunderstanding. The comfort of their shared history began to dissolve, replaced by terse exchanges and the frustrating disconnect of speaking similar, yet unrelatable languages. As Ethan's priorities shifted, the tides of Rebecca's ambitions rose alongside them, her disdainful undercurrents beginning to wash over the sanctity of Marissa's home. To Rebecca, a seasoned provocateur, Marissa's home seemed little more than an obsolete relic, overshadowed by aspirations for something grander, flashier. This perspective dictated her treatment of Marissa, reducing her presence to little more than an inconvenient shadow cast against the sparkling veneer she envisioned for her own future. In a series of quiet affronts, Rebecca's dismissive gestures and unvoiced complaint here, a roll of the eyes, there piled against Marissa's sense of self-worth. And it wasn't just words. It was in the impatience during dinner conversations, the unwillingness to engage with family rituals, and the passive yet insidious undermining of Marissa's authority in her own domain. Within these moments, Marissa felt herself rendered invisible, a ghost in her own home, an uncomfortable interloper grappling with the encroaching shadows of self-doubt. Each slight, each demeaning act served as an echo of the betrayal Marissa felt, creating a cacophony of emotional defiance within her. She realized that the silence she previously wielded as a shield had now become a prison. It was a silence not born of wisdom but of neglect, the kind her resilience could no longer uphold. This raised an urgent question, one that reverberated through the recesses of her heart. Was she to remain a quietly suffering relic in her own story, or reclaim her voice, her dignity, and with them, her sense of home? Marissa's realization, the heart-stopping crescendo of Ethan's full betrayal, drove her to a point where the divide between action and complacency grew insurmountable. Ethan's allegiance to Rebecca, brazenly displayed, left Marissa to confront the painful truth of her growing irrelevance in her son's life. This realization became a catalyst, prompting Marissa to make a decision that would, if nothing else, remind her of her own strength and agency. In her quest to reclaim her dignity and establish boundaries, Marissa's response was as drastic as it was empowering. Changing the locks on her own home spoke volumes. It was a silent declaration that neither her love nor her past could be so easily dismissed. This act marked the tentative beginning of her emergence from the shadows, affirming not only her own needs but also her unwillingness to fade quietly into the background. She was willing to face the consequences, however painful, for the sake of her own self-respect and the future of her fractured family. It was a gamble, a complex interplay of risk and redemption. But in the aftermath, as Ethan began to feel the weight of his own actions and Rebecca started to reckon with the fallout of her machinations, Marissa found an unexpected ally in her younger son Vincent. His support, steadfast and unconditional, provided solace and strength, a reminder that her battle for dignity and the establishment of boundaries was not one she fought alone. And so, fortified by newfound resolve and the unyielding strength that life's trials had bestowed upon her, Marissa embarked on the jagged path of redemption and respect, with each step paving a road back toward the light of understanding and family harmony. Rebecca's dismissive attitude took root like unwelcome ivy, creeping silently through the walls of Marissa's cherished home. Each word, each glance from Rebecca was a subtle denigration of Marissa's domain, a place meticulously crafted with the warm touch of a life lived with purpose and sentimentality. This was no simple dwelling of brick and wood, it was an anthology of memories of shared dreams now trembling under the oppressive judgment of its new occupants. Marissa, within her own sanctuary, found herself an invisible tenant. The laughter that once reverberated through its rooms felt eerily distant, overshadowed by Rebecca's cool and seemingly dispassionate dismissals of her decorative choices, her cherished keepsakes. With every offhand critique, another layer of Marissa's identity was peeled away, leaving behind a raw wound where familial affection used to tether her to this world claimed by her son's allegiance to his wife. Watching her home morph before her eyes into Rebecca's version of adequacy was like witnessing a slow-motion dissolution of her life's work, the beautiful mosaic of a life well lived, unraveling with ruthless efficiency. Inside this subtler warfare, the symbols of Marissa's legacy were swept aside without ceremony. The garden bench, where Andrew proposed, now replaced with sterile, unadorned furniture. Family portraits relocated to corners, out of sight yet forever, in Marissa's mind whispering of better days. Still, the growing invisibility pressed Marissa to a defining moment. Suffocating under the weight of disrespect, resignation wasn't an option. Her existence, her history, could not simply be unmade by the fresh ambitions of a son enthralled and a daughter-in-law dismissive. Beneath the surface of inadequacy, they projected onto her the enduring truth of Marissa's resilience began to simmer. Ethan's complicit silence echoed louder than Rebecca's overtures, eroding the foundation of trust between mother and son that had once been unassailable. His absence was not just physical. It cost him the essence of familial duty, a transformation that came to mar the very fabric of Marissa's deeply woven understanding of motherhood. Each slight of Rebecca's became a tiny incision into Marissa's resolve, testing the tensile strength of bonds she had never imagined could be so easily undone. But as the tension rose, so too did Marissa's resolve solidify embedded within the rich soil of her indignity. Her home, a living testament of love and care, would not be so easily relinquished to malaise and manipulation. This battle was not merely for a home, but for the very essence of who she was, a steward of her own history, a custodian of her dignity. Marissa began to architect her reprisal with painstaking clarity. Examination of her own psyche allowed her to strip away the layers of emotional guilt she felt, replacing them with a firm grounding in her rights as a parent and a matriarch. Understanding that her submission would only invite further erosion of her pride, her resolve grew unwavering and clear. She could no longer stand as a ghost in her own story. The spark of this clarity was ignited by the steadfast presence of her younger son Vincent. In his gaze and unwavering support, Marissa found an unspoken validation for her emerging course of action, a reminder that she needn't bow before the oppressive winds of change. She would not grant complacency a stay in exchange for inertia disguised as peace. Thus emerged a simple but profound gesture, signifying the reclamation of her identity, changing the locks, an act both literal and metaphorical. The metallic click of the tumblers falling into place was a symphony of her newfound autonomy, echoing through the rattled facade of a home and a life herded towards dissolution by external forces. There are those who misunderstand gestures like these as acts of unnecessary defiance. They fail to perceive the deeper narrative of survival and restoration of self-respect beneath. For Marissa, this was no longer about winning a son back, but about reclaiming her voice, her space in a world that was determined to write her into its footnotes. This defiance was a lifeline thrown purely out of self-preservation, an emphatic exit from invisibility into the clarity of self-determination. At its core, this narrative unfurled not only about who held sway over a dwelling, but who Marissa chose to define herself as no longer a mere recipient of decisions made in her absence, but a vibrant force with the pen firmly in her own resilient hand composing each stanza of her continued journey toward self-redemption. The path ahead promised challenges, but with Vincent's unwavering support and the fortitude of a life lived on her terms, Marissa walked towards it, unyielding and visible once more. Ethan once stood as Marissa's faithful son, a loyal ally in the battles of daily life. Yet within the concealed territories of familial bonds lurked an insidious shift, Ethan's affection and allegiance began to stride alongside Rebecca, a woman whose presence wove intricate threads within the fabric of their household. For Marissa, the tipping point manifested not as a singular event, but as an accumulation of whispered disrespects and silent betrayals. The heart of a mother is a repository of resilience, yet even the deepest wells can run dry when repeatedly tapped. In the echoing silence of their shared home, the very walls seemed to withhold their comfort as Ethan's voice rang out boldly, proclaiming what Marissa endeavored to ignore: this house was now Rebecca's. Each word settled in the air like acid rain, eroding the very foundation of trust and respect that Marissa nurtured through years of sacrifice and unwavering devotion. The statement, raw and intrusive, pierced through Marissa's defenses, signaling a betrayal that transcended material possessions, reaching into the core values she had instilled within her children. Experiencing such treachery from her own blood drew Marissa into a labyrinthine exploration, each corner a confrontation with a fractured reality where her influence dimmed in the light of Rebecca's rising dominance. It's a lesson etched painfully in time that the inevitabilities of change, when coupled with misguided loyalties, could upheave the sanctity of love cultivated over decades. This confrontation forced Marissa to reckon with the image she had of her son, reshaping it into a more complex mosaic where love interwove with disappointment and understanding. In moments like these, the impassioned theatrics of such revelations often leave behind a casualty of silence, a muted scream forged from the depths of a mother's broken expectations. It is an unasked test of courage, daring one to drown beneath the undertow of words left unsaid, emotions left unspoken. Yet the very moment a heart shatters is the seed of a metamorphosis. For Marissa, the echo of betrayal kindled a reconciling fire, an indomitable resolve to rewrite her narrative with the ink of empowerment and unwavering self-respect. Such stories often manifest less in raging storms, more in the steady drizzle of realizations that must be faced. As Marissa pondered the decisions that lay before her, she confronted the profound complexity of maternal love. To punish or to prospect, to forgive or to forget, a web of choices spun delicately within her grasp. Do you fight fire with fire, or do you pour water on flames kindled by betrayal? For Marissa, the answer lay in regaining the command of her existence, changing not her circumstances but her responses thereto. The wisdom of the path, untread of choices yet unrealized, directed Marissa towards an act of reclamation, not of possession but of dignity. Thus, the changing of the locks emerged symbolically, a gesture less about exclusion and more about safeguarding the sanctity of self. The tumblers clicking into place reverberated through the corridors of Marissa's heart, heralding the dawn of a renewed sovereignty over her world. She need not wage war with Rebecca, nor enlist Ethan's unconditional loyalty. For Marissa, the ultimate revenge was not bitterness but the robust assertion of her narrative in the silence left by shattered expectations. In the societal reflections of maternal sacrifice lies a common misperception that a mother's love is unconditionally synonymous with forgiveness. Yet Marissa's story challenges this assumption, revealing that within the embrace of love lies the necessity of respect and recognition. In the twilight of their confrontation, Ethan is left standing in the ruins of once unquestioned familial bonds, tasked with reconciling the inheritance of a legacy he unwittingly compromised. The memories of the past persist as silent judges, their verdicts rendered not in boisterous pronouncements but in the enduring silence of personal reflection. Would he choose Rebecca indiscriminately over his mother again, or would he forge a path that acknowledges both loves without sacrificing one for the other? Thus, the narrative charts a new course, a journey where Marissa embarks not on revenge but reclamation. From this crucible she emerges with fortitude reinforced, aligned not against the perceived enemy but against complacency and submission. Her heart, once fractured, now crafts resilience from its cracks, stitching together the shimmering threads of autonomy, dignity, and enduring hope. Marissa stands in the hallway of her weathered yet familiar home, now accentuated by new locks gleaming under the dim light. With a firm turn of the keys, the sound resonates with a finality that echoes through the corridors of her mind, a powerful declaration of reclaiming what had long been overshadowed by complacency and intrusion. This act, simple yet monumental, symbolizes more than just a change in physical boundaries. It represents a profound shift in her own psyche. Marissa understands that this is the beginning of a journey where she demands respect, having realized that it's not solely about what others give, but what she insists upon. Throughout years of sacrifice and nurturing, Marissa had often blurred the lines between love and submission, mistaking self-effacement for selflessness. The garden, those trivial bushes that Rebecca casually dismissed, was not merely an arrangement of plants. It was the fertile ground of Marissa's memories, where family gatherings blossomed and whispers of Andrew's laughter lingered. Yet her vision was marred, fractured by perceived betrayals and the cutting edge of indifference she felt from Ethan and Rebecca. Marissa's heart, once burdened by the weight of unspoken claims and misunderstood roles, now beats with a renewed vigor. It's not revenge she seeks, but rather an establishment of equilibrium within her personal universe. She has learned that true empowerment grows not from hoping others understand her boundaries, but from openly declaring them herself. By changing the locks, she carved a clear demarcation, a reminder that her home is an extension of herself, a sacred sanctuary deserving of reverence. Far from the image of a withdrawn, submissive mother who would retreat into shadows, she stands empowered. Her sadness is tinged with relief, empowered by reclaiming authority in spaces where she had once felt diminished. As night falls and the house settles into a somnolent hum, Marissa's resolve is unyielding, acknowledging that only through her fortification can there be any hope of healing. The scent of nostalgia is not quite so sweet as it once was. It's poignant, reminding her of both what was lost and the resilience gained. She understands now that boundaries are not merely defensive walls, but conduits for respectful relationships, vital agreements that make harmony possible. Her choice to change the locks was not an act of exclusion, but one of protection, a shield for her peace and the memories she holds dear. Ethan, too, stands as a player in this drama, his own journey fraught with realizations and desperate awakenings. It dawns on him the gravity of his choices, the weight that fell upon the structure of his family like creeping vines. Without Marissa's unwavering support, the cracks in his veneer begin to show. Left to navigate a landscape where familial bonds feel tenuous at best, he must now reckon with the life he's built beside Rebecca and the legacy he's chosen to jeopardize. For Marissa, the act of turning those keys echoes with the clarity of hindsight, the truth that paths of reclamation often begin in sadness but culminate in empowerment. With dignity comes the startling capacity for endurance, the discovery that sorrow can fuel strength and propel one towards peace, autonomy, and newfound respect. It's in this crucible that Marissa finds she can love unconditionally, yet demand the mutual respect that sustains it. Thus the house breathes with newfound understanding, its atmosphere charged with the terms Marissa sets forth. Her journey is not into isolation, but towards renewed familial connections on her own terms, built on the premise of respect and dignity she has long defended and finally reclaimed. Ethan's path of realization seems littered with the debris of his past choices, a field tangled with contradictions and missteps. The absence of Marissa's supportive presence unmasks a reality he long ignored, financial curves that bend not in benevolent trajectories, but sharp descents. With every thoughtless expense and each neglected responsibility, awareness blooms like an unwanted flower. The seeds of apathy have given rise to a garden of desperation. Stripped of his mother's stabilizing influence, the built facade of his independence crumbles with every demanding creditor, every urgent bill atop the kitchen counter. These trials aren't mere inconveniences, but rather the mirror into which Ethan must gaze to witness the fissures in his life, fissures he himself carved. Torn between loyalty to a wife whose vision of family matters has fortified his own transformation and a mother whose sacrifices grounded his past, Ethan's personal struggle is now a glaring testament to his own evolution. His emergence as a distant son who labels Marissa's traditionalism as antiquated is symbolic of a generation's grappling with roots and attempted autonomy. As quiet nights settle in, bringing with them echoes of conversations left behind and unspoken apologies that hover thick in the air, Ethan finds himself revisiting moments with Marissa, moments he now perceives through a lens cleansed of arrogance. Her unwavering spirit, a beacon even amidst heartache, becomes the clearest reminder of what matters, what he might still reclaim. Yet the door he assumed would always welcome him stands resolutely locked, bifurcated by the chasm his own hands have carved. Across the emotional ties and tangled loyalties, he sees Rebecca, who navigates this familial rift with her own trepidation, tinged by discomfort at the fractured bond between the Millers. Her simultaneous role as wife and instigator hangs over them, both a persistent specter in their dialogues, spoken and silent. Should she choose to intervene, her influence might be the bridge, or conversely, the divide. Ethan's acknowledgement of his missed judgment doesn't arrive in scenes of climactic tears or dramatic embraces, but rather the subtle surrender to growth, a silent concession to the need for change, a renewal of forgotten values. Genuine reflection shapes new priorities. Priorities anchored more firmly, not solely in Rebecca's aspirations, but his inherent ties to the fundamental heartbeats of home respect and kinship. It is within these realizations that one glimpses Ethan's desperation, sharpening into resolution, the pressing drive to reconcile and rectify, to navigate his own grievances without detriment to his familial connections. The lack of immediate solution adds texture to this journey, a deliberate yet reluctant pace often required for genuine healing. Consciously seeking insight from Marissa's example provides invaluable lessons on endurance and redemption. In rebuilding the intricate framework of this fragile mosaic, the solidity of trust and mutual respect are bricks that Ethan now lays not with Rebecca alone, but with Marissa, foremost seeking genuine solidarity. Amidst the storm of his insecurities, he confronts the narrative he's crafted and the roles he and Rebecca have inhabited, reframing them with sincere understanding. Each step towards this emotional reunion aligns naturally with the strength Marissa demonstrates, a demonstration of dignity that echoes lessons transcending generations. Ethan's vulnerability, once hidden under false bravado, rises as a newfound cloak, one worn with the hope of familial renewal. Between Ethan's quiet revolt against internal dissonance and his contemplation of familial union, a tentative thread of hope spins, a thread he now weaves into the fabric of their expanding possibilities. These moments, born from candor, not entreaty nor emotional coercion, reflect a narrative of pivotal transformation, one where human fallibility meets the courage to redefine oneself. Encouragement lies in their pursuits. Even the most fraught of familial relationships may find redemption. Perhaps Ethan's path, though winding and laden with echoes of mistakes, will guide him toward the heart of a family rebuilt, toward a legacy of strength, consideration, and unbreakable bonds. His mother's resilience inspires, granting every crack its due regard and allowing for a paternal legacy of dignity grounded in earned wisdom. As Ethan's night fades into morning consideration of potential futures, the rhythm of a heart awakened to familial bonds offers the steady backdrop to new beginnings, where reconciliation is no longer a distant hope, but a daily practice. Breathing life back into the Miller family's shared history and their collective horizon. As the dust settles within the Miller household, Marissa stands firm, fortified by the love and support of her younger son Vincent. His unwavering allegiance to her decisions not only provides validation, but also strengthens her resolve to maintain the boundaries she has so courageously established. Vincent has always been the quiet yet perceptive observer, a contrast to his brother Ethan's more impetuous nature. Now he becomes an unexpected beacon of hope and stability, demonstrating a maturity beyond his years. His understanding not only assures Marissa that her actions are justified, but it also confirms that respect is deserved, not demanded. Marissa's steely determination reflects a woman unyielding to the tides of emotional manipulation or the insidious whispers of guilt. The path to reclaiming her dignity has not been easy yet. Each step fortifies her conviction that she will not cede her autonomy to the negligence or disregard of others. Boundaries, once a blurry line, now stand firm, etched in the foundation of her life, reinforced by the lessons her late husband Andrew instilled. The house may have lost some of its warmth, but in its place burns a new flame of independence and self-respect. Vincent's support arrives as a much-needed balm, a gentle reminder of the unwavering bond they share, a bond that survives despite the turbulence caused by his brother's loyalties being so carelessly misplaced. He reassures her that the decision to metaphorically and literally lock her door was a necessity born of love for herself and respect for what she has built. It's not just about locking out disrespect, it's about safeguarding the sanctity of all she holds dear. He stands as a testament to her successful motherhood, a son who understands the value of what she has done, a young man willing to confront the uncomfortable truths that have divided their family. Vincent, with his capacity for empathy and insight, encourages Marissa to stand unflinchingly against the pressure others may exert. In his eyes, she finds reflection not of her own turmoil but of resolve and a shared understanding that silence can often speak louder than words. Yet, while Marissa's exterior bears the marks of resilience, her inner world wrestles with conflicting emotions. A lingering sense of loss shadows her steadfast stance because the distance from Ethan feels like a fracture, perpetually at risk of widening. She doesn't wish to alienate her son. Rather, she yearns for the days when mutual understanding colored their relationship. In these moments of introspection, Marissa nurtures a quiet hope that Ethan might come to see the reality Vincent already perceives, where respect and love coexist without caveat. Meanwhile, Ethan finds himself squaring off against a reality of his own making, a reality that now demands from him a reckoning with his actions. The support he once assumed would be perpetual has now become conditional. He realizes that there's no easy path back to his mother's graces without humility and recognition of the faults that have led them to this chasm. With each passing day, the echo of his mother's decisiveness reverberates through his conscience, a call to action urging him to make amends, to show his remorse not in words, but through the fabric of his choices. Marissa knows that if reconciliation is to come, it must arise not from a place of desperation or duty, but from genuine understanding and change. The onus now rests upon Ethan to navigate this road of transformation, seeking guidance not only from his own introspective journey but also through observing the sincerity of those like Vincent who champion a quieter yet pervasive strength. The reinforcement of Marissa's resolve and the solidarity from Vincent acts as a cornerstone for this evolving family saga. It underscores the powerful narrative of standing firm in one's own beliefs while nurturing the hope of mending fractured relationships. There's an undeniable comfort in knowing that sometimes the heart listens best when surrounded by those who truly see its worth. In the tapestry of experiences that form our lives, it is these moments that color the threads with integrity and fortitude, sustaining us as we weave new stories of reconciliation and enduring bonds. Marissa wasn't prepared for Susan's arrival, an uninvited confrontation that seemed to echo the familial tension simmering beneath the surface. Susan, Rebecca's sister, entered with a disarming smile cloaked in a guise of concern and familial obligation. Yet beneath the surface, her intent was a calculated ploy to sway Marissa, to soften her disciplinary stance, and perhaps even to manipulate her into submission. A serene setting now surged with a clash of intent and resolution. Susan's words were carefully engineered, each syllable dripping with an artful blend of sympathy and subtle condescension. She projected an image of a peacemaker bearing the plea of family unity. However, Marissa could see beyond the facade of Susan's ostensibly altruistic interest. She recognized the maneuvering as another extension of the manipulative tentacles that Rebecca's family seemed to wield so deftly. Susan's narrative painted Ethan and Rebecca as hapless figures caught in a broader familial storm, deflecting accountability as if unity alone could dissolve the dissonance. Marissa remained outwardly calm, but internally her resolve hardened like steel. She had spent a lifetime nurturing her sons within a cocoon of love and morals, and she wasn't about to allow those principles to be unraveled by veiled threats of dissolution. Her dignity had been tested, and she had already embarked on a path of reclamation that would not be easily derailed. As Susan's words rolled on, Marissa was reminded of the power of silence, the unwavering strength of holding one's ground amidst turmoil. Her mind wandered briefly to Vincent, her champion, her pillar of conviction, whose unwavering support reflected the values she herself had instilled. Marissa understood that while she stood alone in this moment, she was fortified by a legacy of strength that she had both inherited and cultivated. She knew that this encounter with Susan was not just about defending her home's sanctity, but embodying the broader fight against manipulation, an assertion of self-worth and boundaries. Susan attempted her final gambit, invoking the need for compromise and attempting to play upon Marissa's maternal instincts, suggesting that yielding was an act of love. But in that instant, Marissa saw through the guise, recognizing the tactic as emotional blackmail dressed in the skin of familial wisdom. She stood firm, not swayed by the narrative of sacrifice that Susan weaved. Marissa's love was beyond manipulation. It was a resolute, unwavering truth that did not necessitate sacrificing self-respect on the altar of familial expectation. When the door finally closed on Susan's departure, Marissa felt the satisfying weight of conviction settle over her. the encounter had left her unshaken, her resolve now more certain than ever. Her home, her dignity, her values, none of it was negotiable. There was a quiet contentment in her solitude, invigorated by the knowledge that she could defend her legacy without capitulating to external pressure. The world outside Marissa's home had tried to breach her fortress of principles, but through adversity she found clarity. Her journey to reclaim what was inherently hers was underscored by the continuous presence of her own certitude. As she sat alone, the phone rang, a voice message from Ethan, a small but significant attempt at reconciliation. Marissa listened, aware that this change in Ethan's tone was in itself a sign of the integrity he was now beginning to grasp. The road ahead was uncharted, but in the depths of her heart she knew this path could lead to a different kind of resolution. In this newfound silence, she realized that while manipulation could attempt to cloud her reality, it could not alter her foundation. Marissa understood that the true essence of familial relationships lay in mutual respect and understanding. Her heart, once burdened by doubt and betrayal, was lightened by the strength of her convictions, always ready to weave a broader, richer tapestry of familial bonds. Ethan sat alone, consumed by the echoes of his own conscience, wrestling silently with the tornado of emotions swirling inside. It was an odd mix of vulnerability and confusion, a storm that had emerged gradually, yet its fury was now undeniable. The weight of his decisions, compounded by Rebecca's relentless pressure, thrust him into murky depths where clarity seemed an elusive beacon. It was Rebecca's whisperings, often under the guise of caregiving, which had altered the landscape of his perceptions. Over time, her voice, laced with subtle reproach and calculated urgency, had woven a complex tapestry of conflicting allegiances. He found himself ensnared in her web, the threads of his relationship with his mother, Marissa, fraying with every word. Each pointed remark Rebecca made about Marissa's supposed inadequacies echoed in his mind, intensifying the dissonance within him. Bound by the relentless tug-of-war between his wife and his mother, Ethan began to flounder, his sense of self splintering like a mirror fractured from the inside. He couldn't ignore this internal bomb ticking away, pointing out every sliver of his divided loyalties. Marissa, with her quiet strength and unyielding spirit, once served as the anchor to his tumultuous existence. Her role in his life, initially imperceptible, now appeared starkly outlined by the absence of her unwavering support. Yet grappling with these emotions was not simply an intellectual pursuit, it was rooted deeply in the visceral awareness of loss and longing. Each day, grounded between the reality Rebecca presented and the cherished memories of his mother, drained his spirit. The psychological conflict crept into every corner of his life, manifesting in an uncertainty that lingered like a shadow. Rebecca's demands hung over Ethan like a storm cloud, pressing him to question where his loyalties truly lay. Was he to continue down this path she dictated, her manipulations masquerading as marital duty and familial fidelity, or were his roots, those the years spent under Marissa's nurturing gaze, still strong enough to support him somewhere within? The lines blurred, one identity unfinished, the other forsaken. As he dwelled on these thoughts, the presence of his wife undeniably impacted his every action. Ethan's vulnerability was a catalyst for Rebecca's insistence, as she frequently reminded him of the life they were building, subtly erasing the foundation established by his past. Yet beneath the surface of Rebecca's dominance, Ethan discerned a frailty, a deep-seated fear that her influence might be waning her composure, nothing more than a precarious facade. Amid the oppressive fog of confusion, Ethan felt a surge of resolve, a flicker amidst the chaos inside his mind. He was tired, exhausted from the constant skirmish of divided love, and desperate for breath in the precarious air of contention. What he needed was not only peace, but also a reconnection with the person he was, the man who recognized the virtues inherited from Marissa, not the one molded by others' expectations. The key to emancipation lay hidden within his own realization, an acknowledgement of the tangled strands that had ensnared him, and a conscious choice to reclaim his autonomy. In his heart, the tug toward reconciliation with Marissa simmered like an undercurrent, undeniable in its intensity. Even as Rebecca prodded him, her presence only a reminder of the convoluted loyalties that clouded his judgment, Ethan knew that real resolution lay outside her realm of influence. Ultimately, Ethan's journey to rediscover himself, to reconcile with the relationships he held dear, was not just about choosing between his wife and his mother. It was about understanding that loyalty should originate from inner convictions rather than external demands. Deep within, he realized that the bridge torn apart by doubt and deception could be rebuilt, not from pleas of forgiveness alone, but by edges softened through understanding and bonds strengthened by integrity. Thus commenced a journey of rediscovery, a path treacherous yet necessary to reconcile a fractured soul. In each choice lay the seeds of transformation, a chance to regain balance and forge a legacy of virtue drawn from the wisdom Marissa had quietly imparted. This wasn't only about redemption. It was about growth, about becoming the man he needed to be. Reflections of authenticity that even Rebecca, when confronting her deepest fears, might ultimately comprehend. Rebecca's decision to apologize did not come easily. For too long she viewed Marissa as an adversary, a relic of a past that she believed needed to be reshaped in her image. However, watching Ethan unravel under the weight of their family crisis uncovered a remorse she couldn't ignore. She stood on the brink of a realization. If she truly loved Ethan, she needed to understand and respect the world he came from, a world Marissa had built with sweat, love, and perseverance. The apology wasn't a mere formality. It was a battle against herself, shedding layers of pride and misconceptions. Her words were sincere, rooted in the desire for genuine reconciliation rather than self-preservation. As she approached Marissa, Rebecca's heart pounded with the uncertainty of how this gesture would be received. Would Marissa see it as an olive branch or simply another manipulation? Nevertheless, Rebecca knew that to regain any semblance of trust or peace within the family, this step was non-negotiable. Marissa, having weathered many storms in her life, approached this moment with cautious optimism. She listened intently as Rebecca, her voice slightly trembling, admitted to the neglect and disrespect she had previously embodied. Rebecca spoke of moments of thoughtlessness and acknowledged the pain her actions had brought upon the family. As her words spilled forth, Marissa could sense the tremor of vulnerability wove through them, a tender acknowledgement of the cracks in Rebecca's own foundation. For Marissa, this apology illuminated a truth she had hoped for, yet seldom allowed herself to believe. Amidst the conflict, she discerned that even the most hardened hearts could evolve. She recognized Rebecca's courage in admitting her faults and found within herself an openness to forgive. Forgiveness wasn't merely about finding closure, it was a conscious decision to rebuild bridges smashed by misunderstanding and ego. Ethan watched the exchange from a distance, his heart swelling with a mixture of relief and hope. This was the gesture he had silently prayed for, a chance for his wife and mother to find common ground. Each moment that passed without confrontation drew him closer to the peace he so yearned to achieve. It wasn't just Rebecca's apology that mattered, but also Marissa's willingness to listen without prejudice. Marissa's acknowledgement of Rebecca's apology, genuine and devoid of gloating, marked the beginning of a new chapter. Her acceptance came not from a place of superiority, but from a profound understanding of human imperfection. Rebecca's willingness to lay bare her defenses spoke volumes, presenting an opportunity for growth and transformation, a chance to forge a new bond based on mutual respect and understanding. Like an artist carefully crafting a masterpiece, Marissa began the process of weaving Rebecca into her life cautiously yet earnestly. Meanwhile, Rebecca embraced this emerging role in the family with a newfound maturity, keenly aware of her responsibilities to foster harmony rather than division. As they navigated the intricacies of daily life, both women found themselves shaping a mosaic of shared experiences and mutual consideration. Through this journey, Ethan found a renewed connection with Audrey, a love born anew amidst the ashes of past strife. He too underwent a transformation, understanding the critical role he played in mediating between the two strongest influences in his life. This rekindled union allowed him to assume the mantle of peacemaker, embodying the lessons Marissa had imparted all those years ago. For Rebecca, this evolving relationship was not just about gaining Marissa's acceptance, but about embracing the raw beauty of familial bonds. It wasn't about winning a silent battle for Ethan's loyalty, but about fostering a supportive environment where each individual could thrive together rather than apart. This transition demanded patience and empathy, a willingness to support and respect Marissa's legacy while simultaneously carving out her own space. Each family dinner became a testament to the power of reconciliation. Conversations flowed more freely, riddled with laughter and insights, each member gradually shedding the burden of previous misunderstandings. The tension that once hovered thick and stifling began to dissolve with each shared meal, each heartfelt conversation unraveling old narratives. The room now held not just echoes of past grievances but melodies of triumph over adversity. Rebecca and Marissa discovered that strength lay not in controlling destiny but in understanding and valuing each other's perspectives. In shedding the armor of unresolved resentment, they unearthed a new form of unity, solidifying their place within the fabric of the family. As Rebecca embraced these moments, she found herself growing not just as a daughter-in-law, but as a partner to Ethan and a mother to their children. She embarked on her journey towards becoming the person her family needed, strong, compassionate, and united in a shared vision of harmony. Through the prism of an apology, old wounds began to heal, woven together with threads of understanding and a commitment to nurturing the family they all held dear. In the heart of a once troubled household, Marissa stood resolute as the newly established beacon of family harmony. Gone were the days when her presence was overshadowed by tensions and unspoken grievances. Here, amidst the evolving familial landscape, she took center stage, setting forth a fresh vision that bound her past wisdom and present hopes into a blueprint for coexistence. Marissa's initiative to establish new family rules served as both a shield and a compass, guiding the family toward uncharted territories of mutual respect and understanding. This was not done in isolation. Instead, it was a collaborative effort with Ethan and Rebecca, who had now embarked on a journey to right past wrongs and forge a new path together. Their willingness to engage in intense negotiations underscored a collective desire for positive change, turning the challenge of rule setting into an opportunity for deepened bonds. These rules weren't about rigid restrictions, but about creating a sanctuary of respect where every voice mattered. Marissa, with her sage perspective, emphasized the importance of boundaries. She understood that clear expectations could prevent misunderstandings and foster an environment where each member felt valued. The lounge, once a place of silent struggles, became the arena where ideas were freely exchanged, dismantling old patterns of miscommunication brick by brick. Marissa set forth principles that championed family dinners as sacred rituals where conversations were free from distractions, nurturing the lost art of attentive listening. She also introduced the idea that shared responsibilities were the backbone of a harmonious home, ensuring everyone contributed to the household's upkeep, transforming chores into opportunities for shared laughter and teamwork. With these guidelines, spaces within the home became more than just physical constructs. They were imbued with meaning and collective intent. Ethan and Rebecca were entrusted with commitments that reflected their dedication to mending and nurturing this newly defined relationship. Ethan promised to discard the shackles of his past behavior and reclaim the empathetic son Marissa remembered. His actions mirrored a genuine resolve to uphold the newly minted agreements, from joining his mother in the garden he once overlooked, to supporting the echoes of Marissa's storied past with his newfound understanding. Rebecca's commitment was equally profound. A pledge to respect the history and emotions encapsulated within the household took root in her heart. She saw the value in embracing the home's legacy and, most importantly, recognized the strength in Marissa's quiet resilience. Rebecca joined Marissa in honoring the home's legacy by choosing to learn and grow from past mistakes instead of repeating them. The negotiation process itself was marked by a tapestry of emotions, tears of reconciliation mingled with hopeful smiles, laughter interspersed with moments of introspection. Each session revealed layers of understanding, revealing the vulnerable yet determined individuals invested in the unfolding narrative. The underlying tension that had once clouded family gatherings dissipated, replaced by the serene understanding that permeated future interactions. As the new rules were embraced with sincerity, the atmosphere within the household shifted perceptibly. Old walls that once rebuffed change now absorbed the warmth of shared intentions and values. The collective journey became not just about preventing past missteps, but about cultivating a shared vision imbued with creativity, compassion, and continuity. Marissa, in her wisdom, knew that rules alone could not carry the weight of harmony. They needed constant nurturing and reinforcement through everyday actions and decisions. As such, this was the beginning of regular family meetings, inviting open communication and offering a space where grievances could be aired without fear of judgment or retaliation. These gatherings quickly became the family's compass, helping navigate the complexities that arise when multiple generations coexist under one roof. The simple act of setting ground rules had a profound ripple effect extending beyond the immediate household. Family members who had previously taken sides found themselves drawn together, united by a newfound respect for the guidelines Marissa had deftly woven into the family fabric. Even Susan, once a source of divisive influence, began to soften, drawn toward this budding unity. This period of adjustment was about more than just ticking boxes on a list of family do's and don'ts. It signified a cultural shift, transforming a house that had witnessed much turmoil into a home where love, respect, and harmony coexisted. The family meetings, sacred dinners, and shared chores became the building blocks of a rejuvenated familial culture, emphasizing collective growth and mutual respect. In this way, Marissa didn't just secure peace within her home. She watched it expand, weaving a resilient web of family bonds that could withstand the trials of time. Marissa looked upon this tapestry of rules and relationships with quiet reverence, not as an active participant, but as a custodian of generational wisdom. Each family member, weaving their aspirations and struggles into the newly established framework, contributed to a generational legacy richer than any hewn stone or bound duty. And in that enduring legacy, Marissa found the closure she never even knew she needed. In the quiet embrace of early morning, when the world seems at ease and the air carries whispers of renewal, Ethan and Rebecca found themselves stepping back into Marissa's home, a place that now glowed with a warmth and familiarity that had long been obscured by conflict and misunderstanding. Their return was not marked by grand gestures or proclamations, but by the simple exchange of looks and the shared silence that spoke volumes more than words ever could. This homecoming was less about physical presence and more about a profound emotional reconciliation, a necessary clearing of troubled waters that had once separated mother and son. Forgiveness, an age-old concept often discussed, yet so intricately complex when lived, began to weave its delicate threads through the hearts present in that home. Marissa, having navigated the stormy seas of betrayal and disappointment, stood now as a beacon of resilience and wisdom. She had discovered through these trials the necessity of embracing forgiveness not as a sign of weakness, but as a potent force of personal liberation and familial regeneration. This realization had softened the hard lines etched by past grievances and allowed love to seep through, binding the family anew. Ethan looked at his mother with a renewed understanding, his earlier actions now illuminated by the harsh yet enlightening light of introspection. This journey back to his roots marked more than just physical geography. It was a rediscovery of fundamental truths he had lost sight of. When the dust of conflict had finally settled, what remained were the lessons etched in both heart and memory, lessons about loyalty, respect, and the rare purity of unconditional love. Rebecca, whose journey had intertwined so fatefully with Marissa's, found herself undergoing a transformation as well. Her apology had not marked the end of her trials, but rather had initiated a deeper process of healing and reconciliation. She found solace and strength in Marissa's forgiving nature, realizing that respect and humility were the true stepping stones toward lasting relationships. It was in those quiet moments, where doing the right thing hovered just beyond her comfort zone, that Marissa showed her what family truly meant. A renewed sense of purpose filled the household, translating into everyday actions and gatherings. Where once there were silences heavy with judgment, now there was laughter, shared stories, and a palpable sense of camaraderie. Family dinners became moments of connection where each story told was a thread contributing to the expanding tapestry of shared history, grounding everyone in a sense of belonging. The marks of resilience became evident in their daily interactions, the casual banter over dinner, the joint efforts in maintaining the garden, and even in the gentle chiding that now bore an affectionate edge. Ethan and Rebecca had moved from simply coexisting under the same roof to actively participating in the life that Marissa had so lovingly built. This participation was not one of obligation but of genuine commitment to nurture what had been broken. Building on Marissa's established guidelines, there emerged a blossoming respect for the rhythm and rituals that characterized the familial space. These newfound routines were not mere obligations but joyous opportunities to contribute to that space. And slowly, from the ashes of misunderstandings, a stronger, more resilient family structure emerged, where every member found their voice and place. In these gentle acts of reconciliation, Marissa witnessed the realization of her deepest hopes, not merely for peace, but for the enrichment of the familial soul, through shared understanding and empathy. Her role had shifted from the solitary custodian of her family's legacy to an active participant in its vibrant renewal. This transmutation from preserver to participant illustrated the beautiful cycle of familial growth, where lessons of the past entwine seamlessly with actions for the future. Consequently, the seeds of discord were replaced with the blooms of compassion. Every skirmish fought had prepared each member for the victories of the heart now unfolding. In the nature of true forgiveness and mutual respect, the bonds holding Marissa's home strengthened, promising longevity and a depth that transcended the trials that once shook its foundations. As the sun set on that chapter, casting golden hues upon walls that had witnessed much of life's theater, there lay a promise in the fabric of relations, intertwined with resilience and compassion, a promise that with every trial faced, there emerged an opportunity for healing, growth, and love. It was in this space of renewed bonds and revitalized love that the family found not just solace but an enduring and softly lit path forward. In the gentle glow of newfound peace, the air felt different. A tangible softness seemed to cling to every interaction, every smile, and every shared moment in Marissa's home. Rebecca and Ethan had begun to nestle comfortably into this newly forged chapter, a testament to the power of sincere apologies and the hard-earned respect that had been kindled from the fires of past discord. Their every action was a conscious embrace of Marissa's firm but fair conditions, weaving a tapestry of respect that cushioned the stark edges of previous conflicts. Rebecca, once perceived as the grand disruptor, had transformed into a figure willing to learn and bend with the familial current. Her efforts were seen in the smallest of gestures, joining Marissa in the kitchen to prepare meals, sharing recipes that once colliding in the muddled tensions of the past now united them in a shared culinary dance. These moments, quaint yet powerful, became the building blocks of a newfound camaraderie. Marissa observed Rebecca's earnest attempts at learning not just her way around the pantry, but navigating the intricacies of her heart, a journey worth more than simple civility. Ethan, too, dived into this harmonious reintegration with a soulful blend of humility and determination. No longer the boy tethered to the arguable allure of sides, he recognized the profound value of the middle ground. His interactions brimmed with intentionality, a hug here that lingered slightly longer, a laugh shared over breakfast, a conscious effort to help his mother with chores, which once might have been done out of duty, now radiated genuine compassion. The love that had nourished him in youth was bid a reconciliation in adulthood, cultivating a deep-seated appreciation for the contours of his mother's enduring spirit. Perhaps it was in these everyday interactions where the true magic lay. The mundane fused with moments that shifted from simple gestures to deliberate reminders of unity and resilience. Family dinners became less about the food and more about the gathering. The comfortable hum of voices drifted seamlessly together, devoid of former hesitations, laden with curiosity and joy. Laughter, poignant and eruptive, often spilled into shared memories, comically recounted tales of Ethan's childhood misadventures, evening-long exchanges, redefining conversations once tainted by misapprehension. The echoes of discord, which had once seemed loud and inescapable, were now reduced to whispers. The family, learning from the bruises of the past, fostered a home that was not just physically inviting but emotionally nurturing. The walls of Marissa's house, weathered by time and trials, witnessed a rebirth that went beyond structural labor, a renovation of hearts and minds. Each member, more attuned to the pulse of the others, invested in the shared beat, a rhythm of growing affection underpinning their interactions. In the flux of this evolving narrative, it was crucial to maintain vigilance against the insidious return of complacency. Marissa, the quiet yet resolute architect of this renewed connection, held her ground with gentle firmness. Her conditions, once articulated during moments of hurt and rage, were not forgotten. They were, as she had intended, the informal yet binding constitution of their newly established equilibrium. When discussions veered into potentially contentious territory, Marissa steered them back with subtlety and wisdom, preserving the tapestry of respect they had so diligently woven. As each day passed, Marissa could sense that tangible change that was both radical and warmly nostalgic. Her home, once the nucleus of familial rift, transformed into a cradle of reminiscence and potential. And yet she knew this wasn't a final destination, but a continuum, a practice of love, respect, and understanding to be diligently pursued. Her interactions, once strained with her son and daughter-in-law, had blossomed into bonds, layered with earnest insights and shared respect, binding them not just by blood, but a deeper, more elusive thread woven through experience and understanding. In this perhaps lay the greatest lesson of all: boundaries, once perceived as barriers by Ethan, revealed themselves as beacons guiding toward healthier, more fulfilling relationships. Marissa's fortitude and unwavering belief in the necessity of respect and communication had begotten a microcosm of harmony. Each challenged moment, every trial faced, had cemented a familial fortification resilient against the winds of future turmoil. In the growing light of this new dawn, the family found the world brighter, infused with the realization that from brokenness beauty could indeed unfurl. Their story was not merely of revenge or retribution. It was a testament to the intricate dance of forgiveness, comprehension, and the tireless labor of love. A tale that whispered, defined by understanding not just of each other, but of oneself, and the realization that in unity, in shared respect and dignity, profound healing became possible. As the sun set on the Miller household, there was a perceptible shift in the narrative that had once been dominated by conflict and betrayal. The echoes of fractured relationships had faded, replaced by the quiet rustle of leaves in the evening breeze, a testament to the healing power of time and truth. Marissa stood at her door, watching the world outside with new eyes, eyes that had weathered the storm and emerged with a clarity as sharp as the morning light that would soon chase away the darkness. Beneath her feet, the earth felt solid, secure, a reflection of her new reality, one grounded in dignity and profound inner strength. Marissa realized that the adversities she faced were not stumbling blocks, but stepping stones toward a transformation beyond revenge. Her opposition, once formidable, had crumbled into shadows, nothing more than a distant memory. The mats she once shared with Ethan and Rebecca had morphed into a testament of growth, not just for her but for her family. Rebecca, who once wielded influence with the precision of a dagger, now approached with humility, her sharp edges softened by the realization of love's demands. Ethan, torn and lost in a sea of divided loyalties, found firm footing beside his mother, weaving ties renewed by understanding. Their turbulence had ceased, leaving a hush between them laden with unspoken apologies and a silent vow to tread more carefully. In the quietude of their renewed harmony, Marissa's heart sang a song of triumph cloaked in serenity. She didn't need to raise her voice to be heard. Her silence had become her kingdom. A realm where dignity sat on a throne built from resilience and wisdom. The walls that once contained the echoes of discord were now witnesses to laughter and shared meals, bonds not just repaired but reinforced by the flames that once threatened to consume them. Despite the resolution, Marissa's gaze held more than just satisfaction. It was intimate knowledge of the power of time, forgiveness, and the enduring strength of familial love. She learned that victory need not be loud. It can be the gentle whisper of understanding, in the quietest moments, or the subtle shift of a heart long entangled in bitterness, finally finding peace. And you, standing on the precipice of your own trials, gazing into the tumultuous sea of relationships, if you were Marissa, could you have waited in such silence? Would your resolve have matched her quiet strength, a stillness that shouted louder than rage ever could? In a world driven by noise and haste, could you have allowed time to peel back the layers, revealing the truth hidden beneath the veneer of anger and betrayal? For some, endings come not with a fiery burst but with a soft exhalation, the sound of a door unlocking, swinging open to reveal the possibilities beyond. It is in these moments that true liberation is found, not freedom bound by external shackles, but the internal release of heartache past. In the hollow and empty room echoes not with loneliness, but with potential, the story unwritten, life's next chapter, awaiting its chance to begin. Marissa didn't need external validation. True transformation was inward, a gentle unfolding like the first light of dawn. As she turned away from the door, leaving the past behind, the shadows didn't loom threateningly. They fell away, light slashing through with a fierce brilliance that reflected the armory of lessons learned and the grace of forgiveness embraced. She begged her heart to remember not the pain but the growth it had fostered, the resilience etched into her being. And in this acceptance, she found the power to smile, to hold her head high amidst the ruins of what was, stepping confidently into what could be. and you tethered by your own narratives, would you linger long enough in the silence to hear its truths? Would you allow the quiet to swallow you whole, only to be reborn into a sanctuary built on empathy and strength unforeseen? In the closing of Marissa's tale, there is no grand revelation, no sermon polished with platitudes. There is only an understanding, a sacred acknowledgement, that some stories end quietly sacred in their simplicity. A room is no longer empty but filled with the light of transformation, and the air is laden with the scent of new beginnings. This is where Marissa stands, not at an end but at the threshold of potential, the echo of her quiet triumph, a sacred gift born into eternity.